Average language learners who are inexperienced and unprofessional in the field tend to learn vocabulary. And when they want to increase the vocabulary, they tend to memorize individual words. They just write down and list them one under another, and they study it that way. They just memorize it, and they try to keep it in their mind, and then they hope that they will apply it in a proper way. They either take it from a text or from a dictionary. They see the words they find useful, and they just write them down and then memorize them. But I find this way of learning problematic for five reasons. First of all, vocabulary isn't something isolated from the other aspects of the language. If vocabulary needs to be learned, it should be learned in relation with the other aspects of the language, like reading, listening, writing, and even speaking, and even grammar. Why? Because when you learn the words that way, I mean, maybe it's a topic of some other video that I'm going to make in the future. I mean, the proper way of learning vocabulary. I mean, for this moment, I want to note that vocabulary is not isolated from the other aspect of the language, because when you learn a new vocabulary, you need to learn it with the other aspects of the language together, so that it should improve in parallel with reading, in parallel with listening, in parallel with writing and speaking, because this is a more practical way of learning vocabulary rather than memorizing them. So, the second reason why I think that solely memorizing vocabulary is problematic is because learning individual words is a tedious, stressful, and uncreative way of learning a language. Because learning language requires enjoyment and creativity. These two things are really important, because you should be psychologically prepared, psychologically tuned to acquire a language. Because if you're not tuned psychologically, if you're not in the right psychological mood, you will not be able to acquire the language in a proper way. And that's why this is a tedious process and stressful and not at all creative. And that is one of the main reasons why you cannot learn a language in such a way. I mean, a language in a whole, and vocabulary as well. So the third reason is, when you study in this way, the words won't stick to your memory forever, and even for a long time, because after a very short time you will forget those words. Why? Because individual words do not let you imagine and visualize the whole picture. What do I mean by that? I mean, for example, let's take one individual word like work. Imagine that you're a foreigner, I mean, not non-native speaker of English, and you want to improve your English, and you learn the word work. So when you learn the word work, I mean, it doesn't give you a lot of scene, I mean, a lot of picture. I mean, it doesn't give you the whole picture. So what can you imagine when you hear the word work? And there isn't much that you can imagine. But if you learn it in a context, let's say in a statement. Statement said, my father goes to work every morning. Here, along with the word work, you also learn some other words which can be related to work. And in this case, you don't only learn the word work, but you also learn the other words that can be used with it, and you can make and build and structure and engineer a more meaningful sentences. And you can also imagine the whole picture. So your father, morning, the sun is rising, your father has breakfast, and he leaves work, he gets into his car and drives to work. And the work is an office or a hospital or whatever. So it gives you the whole picture that you can imagine. And that's why you can remember this word more clearly and more vividly. All right, the fourth reason why I think so, why I think that that's merely memorizing the words is problematic, is because even if you miraculously didn't forget those words, there'll still be very little chance that you will be able to put them into practice. Why? Because you learned it in an isolated way. You didn't learn these words in a context. You didn't learn these words inside a system. You didn't learn these words in relation with other words. So you have no idea how they can be used in a certain structure. When you learn words in a system, in a structure, or let's say in a context, you also learn how to use these words in relations with others. For example, I want to give you an example from English again, because viewers of this video are probably English speakers, and that's why this example might fit you better. So, for example, let's learn the words afraid. I'm also a non-native speaker of English. My English is my third language actually, and that's why I know where I'm coming from. So let's take the word afraid. The word afraid, for example, you wrote it down as an English learner. You wrote it down, afraid, and you wrote the translation of that word in your language. But you know that we don't use the word afraid just as it sounds. We don't say, for example, I afraid dogs. It doesn't work that way. It has a to be verb in front of it. You should say I am afraid, he's afraid, not just I afraid, he afraid. And it also has a preposition that comes after it. I mean, before the object, there is a preposition and then the object. But if you don't learn it that way, if you don't learn it in a context with the words surrounding it, you will just use it, as I said before, I afraid dogs, which is inappropriate, which is wrong. Reason 5, why I think this is problematic, is because even if you miraculously can apply them in your speech, even if you can do that, okay, let's just, for the sake of argument, say that you apply them in your speech. It's likely that you'll use them inaccurately, inappropriately, or in an unnatural way. Inaccurately, inappropriately, or in an unnatural way, because one word can mean can have a certain meaning in one context, but in a different context, it can have a slightly different meaning, or it can have a totally different meaning. And that's why knowing that word doesn't mean, knowing the meaning of that word, the translation of that word in your language, doesn't mean that you can apply it everywhere. Because there can be synonyms that can be more applicable in that position or in that context. Okay, for example, let's take the word comfortable and convenient. So in some languages, I don't want to give an example of certain language, you might not know that language, but in some languages, in some non-English languages, comfortable and convenient are translated in the same way. They're translated in the same way. But English speakers know that comfortable and convenient are totally different words. I mean, you cannot apply them anywhere you want. For example, you can't say, I have a convenient sofa in my living room. So this is a wrong way of using that word, because convenient means different. You can say comfortable sofa in my living room, but convenient. But you cannot say, for example, my apartment is in a comfortable place of the city. It doesn't sound right. You should say my apartment is very convenient because it is close to subway stations, it's close to the bus stops, it's close to restaurants, it's close to schools, and so on. So and that's why never learn vocabulary. Never memorize vocabulary. Never just merely memorize that vocabulary. Try to learn them in context. But the topic of how to learn vocabulary and what is the right way of learning a vocabulary, I'm going to make a video next time about it. And please follow us, stay tuned. And by the way, if you have experienced something that opposes the ideas or opposes the point that I made in this video, or if you have experience or if you have knowledge or experience that supports the ideas and points that I made in this video, please write in the comment section below and let us know about it, because we also want to benefit from you, to benefit from your knowledge, to benefit from your experience. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time.